Google คิดอะไรกับวงการ Healthcare ทำไมบริษัทเทคโนโลยียักษ์ใหญ่เนี่ยถึงลงทุนมหาศาลในอุตสาหกรรมนี้ Will AI replace doctors?
I'm going to give two examples. One is with pilots. So when a pilot had the ability to fly planes, they ended up getting all this instrumentation. And they became much better pilots. They can carry many more people. One of the things that we have always spoken about is that doctors can continue to up-level. They would be able to actually address a much larger population set. The next stage of the challenge is to go from a population set of tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions. So when I started specifically in healthcare at Google, that was 10 years ago. And we had, at the time, many different theories of how technology could help in healthcare. And so it seemed that the healthcare space was ripe for tech disruption. What we ended up doing also was that I found that AI was very compelling in this space because where AI is strong, it inherently is powerful with dealing with complex data sets, large data sets. And the medical data sets are 1,000 times bigger than what you have indexed on the web. And this is not the first time this has happened. This has happened so many times in technology that I think if you have studied the history of technology, you'll see that there's an ebb and flow to all of these technological platforms. And what motivates me is that every time that happens, we have a chance to transform society to be better.
The Secret Sauce
สวัสดีครับผมเคนนักครินทร์และนี่คือ The Secret Sauce
What's your secret?
AI จะมาเปลี่ยนโลกการแพทย์อย่างไรแล้วบริษัทยักษ์ใหญ่อย่าง Google กำลังคิดอะไรเรื่องของอุตสาหกรรมสุขภาพครับวันนี้อยากชวนคุยเรื่องที่เป็นอินไซต์สุดๆนะครับเพราะว่าเราโชคดีมากๆเลยที่ได้คุยกับตัวจริงเสียงจริงจากบริษัท Google นะครับนั่นก็คือคุณ Katherine Chou ท่านเป็น Head of Product แล้วก็ UX ของ Google Research คือต้องเล่าอย่างนี้ก่อนนะครับว่า Google Research เนี่ยก็เป็นเหมือนหน่วยงานวิจัยและพัฒนาของ Google ที่ทำวิจัยและพัฒนาโดยเอาเทคโนโลยีต่างๆเนี่ยไปปรับใช้ในอุตสาหกรรมหลากหลายมากมายไม่ว่าจะเป็นเรื่องของ climate change เรื่องของการแพทย์เรื่องของ traffic หรือว่าการจราจรคือใช้ได้หมดเลยเพราะว่าเขามี core technology เป็นบริษัทนวัตกรรมอยู่แล้วนะครับวันนี้ที่เราชวนคุยเนี่ยเพราะเขามีเคสและเป็นเคสที่เขาทำกับประเทศไทยแล้วก็อินเดียนะครับเขาทำกับโรงพยาบาลราชวิถีทำเรื่องอะไรเอา AI มาช่วย detect หรือว่า diagnose หรือการตรวจว่าคุณเป็นเบาหวานขึ้นตาหรือเปล่าถ้าใครที่มีญาติหรือว่าพอคุ้นเคยกับโรคเบาหวานอยู่บ้างเนี่ยก็น่าจะพอทราบนะครับว่าเบาหวานเนี่ยถ้ามันลุกลามแล้วมันขึ้นไปที่ตาเนี่ยมันอันตรายมากเลยนะครับมันอาจจะทำให้เรามองไม่เห็นเลยนะครับแต่ว่าจริงๆแล้วมันไม่ได้แก้ยากขนาดนั้นถ้าเกิดเรารู้ก่อนก็คือจับสัญญาณได้ก่อนว่ามันจะเกิดสิ่งเหล่านี้ขึ้นก็สามารถที่จะบรรเทาอาการเหล่านี้ได้ประเทศไทยหลายครั้งเนี่ยพอเราไม่มีเทคโนโลยีกลายเป็นว่ารู้อีกทีก็สายเกินไปซะแล้ววันนี้ Google ก็เลยเอาเทคโนโลยี AI จากห้องทดลองมาใช้ในวงการการแพทย์ของประเทศไทยและมี use case จริงบุคคลที่ผมจะได้พูดคุยเนี่ยเขาก็บินตรงมาจากสหรัฐอเมริกาเลยครับแล้วก็มาชวนคุยกันถึงโปรเจกต์อันนี้ที่ใช้คำว่าเริ่มต้นประสบความสำเร็จและคือเริ่มที่จะใช้จริงแล้วทีนี้ผมถือโอกาสนี้แทนที่จะคุยแค่เรื่อง AI ใน Healthcare โปรเจกต์นี้อย่างเดียวเนี่ยผมก็เลยชวนคุยเรื่องกว้างๆทั้งหมดเลยด้วยไม่ว่าจะเป็น Google คิดอะไรกับวงการ Healthcare ทำไมบริษัทเทคโนโลยียักษ์ใหญ่เนี่ยถึงลงทุนมหาศาลในอุตสาหกรรมนี้ AI จะมาแทนที่คุณหมอไหม AI จะมาเปลี่ยนแปลงวงการแพทย์อย่างไรวงการสุขภาพอย่างไรหรือเรื่องของจริยธรรมเรื่องของ ethics เรื่องของความผิดพลาดมันจะเป็นอย่างไรแล้วก็ยังชวนคุยเรื่องอื่นๆด้วยนะครับไม่ว่าจะเป็นเรื่อง DeepSeek ในฐานะที่คุณแคทเธอรีนเนี่ยอยู่ในวงการจริงๆก็น่าจะเห็นภาพอะไรที่ลึกซึ้งกว่าพวกเรานะฮะเดี๋ยวลองไปฟังกันนะครับว่า AI จะมาเปลี่ยนแปลงวงการแพทย์อย่างไรและ Google Research เนี่ยทำไมเขาถึงจริงจังกับเรื่องของ Healthcare มากๆครับ Thank you so much, Katherine, for joining us today. It's very a pleasure to have you on my show.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. And I understand that you are a leading force behind, I would say, a groundbreaking AI technology that is transforming healthcare industry. and this time you visit Thailand for many purposes. So why don't you start by introducing yourself and your role at Google?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Katherine. I have been at Google for 20 years. For the last 10 years, I've been working in healthcare and life sciences in Google Research. And since then, I have also, in the last 3 years, started running the broader Google Research product and UX teams. And this entails everything from health, science, climate, earth. We also do work in ML foundations, algorithms, efficiencies. So it's actually comprehensive of all of our Google research. And I've been at Google working on new businesses for many of those years. And for the first 10 years, I had been developing businesses for Google. And these businesses, you could actually build them in 1 to 2 years because 20 years ago, the web was not well developed. And so you could actually build a whole new business in 1 to 2 years. So I refer to myself as a serial entrepreneur, which is I've not left Google, but I've actually worked on many, many different businesses across my time at Google.
I understand that you have medical background as well.
Yes, so in healthcare specifically, we started 10 years ago. A few of us actually got together and wanted to work in the healthcare space. And this was because I had already built up many businesses and I felt that we should be able to do that and help societal causes. And I was attracted to the healthcare space. A group of us went and got what was referred to as an executive MD degree at Harvard. And it was just a very brief thing. It was about 3 months course. And this was something that has been spun up and other people can now participate in it. But at the time, it was fairly novel to take tech industry leaders and then introduce them into the medical field. And that was when we started working on AI in healthcare as well.
So what bring you here to Thailand?
Well, I'm here because we have, for the last 7 years, since 2017, been working on AI in healthcare for diabetic retinopathy. And that is a disease that affects people who have diabetes. It causes blindness. It's a leading cause of blindness. And it's actually entirely preventable and treatable. So it's a very interesting disease because you can actually do something about it quite directly. Now, there is about 800 million people in the world that have diabetes. And you have about 6 million people in Thailand who have diabetes. And it's a little bit close to like about 10% of your population. And as you think, out of those 6 million people, 1 out of every 3 is going to develop some form of diabetic retinopathy. And that is too many people to be able to screen for diseases. And the typical ratio of specialists to the number of patients that you want to see is about 1 to 12,000. But where we have really in some of these areas like Thailand is more like 1 to 100,000. And so you want to actually scale up the ability to screen and diagnose. So what we've developed is a program called ARDA. It's a model that helps detect diabetic retinopathy. And we partnered very closely with some visionary people here in Thailand who reached out to us to be able to actually test to see if these models are performant in Thailand with the populations that's here. And we've also been able to see if it works in clinical practice. We found that it helps empower nurses, and so we want to give it to local corporations here to be able to take it and scale it.
So, wow, it's such a wonderful project. But before we jump to that amazing project, I would like to give the audience some context. From my experience, Google is widely known for innovation in especially digital and information technology.
That's right.
However, fewer people recognize or realize its strong focus on healthcare. So please tell us why healthcare, why is Google investing in healthcare, and what are your main goals?
So when I started specifically in healthcare at Google, That was 10 years ago. And we had, at the time, many different theories of how technology could help in healthcare. We saw a lot of inefficiencies with healthcare. One of the things that technology can do is to help eradicate a lot of those inefficiencies. And so it seemed that the healthcare space was ripe for tech disruption. What we ended up doing also was that I found that AI was very compelling in the space because where AI is strong, it inherently is powerful with dealing with complex data sets, large data sets, and the medical data sets are 1,000 times bigger than what you have indexed on the web. And so knowing that we're an information services company, organizing the world's health information and making it useful and accessible was something that was very much in the hopes and dreams of what we would like to do with our technologies. And it was so perfect for the kind of technologies we had just started uncovering in AI. Things like these models, they're called convolutional neural networks. They were very good at detecting cats. We thought, maybe let's apply that to detecting diseases in things like your retina, your eye, or chest x-rays. And that was all a theory at the time, but we were able to start proving out that this was entirely doable.
Oh, wow, interesting. But I think right now we are in the new era of AI, Gen AI, and with AI playing a growing role across industry.
Yeah.
I would like to know from your insight, how do you see its impact on healthcare?
So specifically with generative AI, it unlocks many things. Now, generative AI is based on these transformer models that we actually had back in 2016. So we had already started implementing technologies then. It's just that it's so powerful now in terms of being able to do something that people didn't expect with language, that this technology has become prevalent amongst everyone else. So what it is very capable of, and we had started already working on this from 2016, was summarization and synthesis of information. In the medical field, this is useful for things like if you're having conversational dialogue like we are with your physician. At the time, in many countries, you need to have somebody take notes or the doctor has to take notes afterwards. We would take it and have it assist the doctor with their actual clinical workflow. And so that was one of the things that we did early on. Now, where it goes from here is that it actually can be conversational now with the patients directly too. And there is this real opportunity for generative AI to actually facilitate with triaging and screening and early kind of advice and even potentially behavioral change that needs to help people with their health.
Interesting. And I know this is a very simple question, but I want to ask you, will AI replace doctors?
I think that there is this concept that I've become familiar with, which is that there is, I'm going to give two examples. One is with pilots. So when a pilot had the ability to fly planes, they ended up getting all this instrumentation and they became much better pilots. They can carry many more people. One of the things that we have always spoken about is that doctors can continue to up-level. They would be able to actually address a much larger population set. You can actually start picking the right problems as opposed to something that maybe was misdiagnosed and it came the wrong direction. And you as a doctor now have to work on a patient that wasn't actually the right patient for you to be focused on. So there's a lot of things that actually can continue to get better for the doctors. The other example that I have is that computers back in the day were people. And they were people who crunched numbers. And when the first computer came along, it ended up allowing for those people to do something else. What they didn't see at the time was that we would have far more jobs, people programming, than being computers. So I think the job may shift a little bit in terms of the future. Let's say we played out 5 years, 10 years from now. The role of the doctor may shift from what they do today. But that might be a really good thing because some of the work they do today is quite tedious. We have very long lines where the patients aren't able to see the doctor except for a very short amount of time. And this is a major problem in the US. So it drains the doctor, frankly. And I think that we have this real potential to actually just take a lot of that aspect of what makes it so difficult to treat patients and reduce the burden of that on the clinician.
Wow, I totally agree. And I think there are so many aspects that AI can play a significant role.
Yeah.
So what about Google? I think you mentioned earlier about the role of Google in this industry. But tell me more about Google's approach or, future investment that Google are closely looking at in this healthcare industry because it's very large
Yes.
Numbers that you can play with.
Yes. So our approach from the beginning has been to, one, understand what is feasible, then validate that. So in the clinical world, it's been very helpful to work in such a regulated, they set the bar very high. So you don't just put AI out there. You have to actually validate it. You don't just validate it once or twice. You validate it with a whole cohort, a larger population set. We went to this level of making sure it worked across different ethnicities, different skin tones. You want to know if it generalizes. And in fact, we did that here in Thailand, which is we partnered to actually, with Dr. Paisan to see if this would actually generalize to the Thai population, because that's not always the case. In this case, it did do that, but we also learned in some of these studies is what didn't go right in the workflow. Things that was about lighting or the setup. So when you put the model into real practice, there's so many other factors that come into play as to whether it's going to work or not. So this is some of the steps that we went through to validate to ourselves. And then this helps also with regulatory bodies and understanding if it's a safe model to put out there. Our approach going forward is to continue to partner. There's nothing that Google can do alone in the healthcare space. It absolutely relies on an ecosystem of partners for us to be able to make this happen. So as we develop new technologies, we'll go through similar processes, working with our partners, working with the regulatory bodies, working with companies that actually will help commercialize and take it out to market. But it will certainly be something that I think we are actually going to have to keep evolving and getting better at.
That's why you have been working with Thailand and India. So tell me
That's right.
more about your project, ARDA. What is it?
ARDA, it is an easier way to say automated retina diabetic assessment.
Okay.
And so it is.
So it's all about assessment.
It's about assessment. So it's a diagnostic. It helps tell whether you have diabetic retinopathy. So that tells you that risk that I was telling you about, whether you're going to go blind. And there's different severity levels. So the earlier you catch it, the more treatable it is. And so you want to actually screen it as early as possible. And one of the visions that I mentioned Dr. Paisan had was you have uniquely here, compared to the US, you have a universal health care plan here. And you have screening programs that are at a national level. So there is this opportunity to actually truly screen all of the people with the assistance of AI.
Is it costly?
Is it costly to use the model, or is it costly to deploy it?
Both.
So it's actually not costly from the perspective of running the model, because it's just compute, right? So it's about as costly as your computer is to run the model. But to get to the point where you can run that model, it's actually quite a lot of work and expenses to try and prove that the model is qualified. And then there's additional work that you have to do to actually take it to a commercial state, combine it with the machines. So these are on retina machines, to be able to actually deploy it on the retina machines and then be able to continue to update it and refresh it. So there's a cost to all of that.
For those who might not be familiar with technical terms, jargon.
Yes, sorry.
What are the pain points of this diagnosis and how does it work?
Okay, the pain points for diabetic retinopathy is that if you have diabetes, you might think that you're losing your vision just because of old age or something else, but actually it could very well be because you're having diabetic retinopathy. So the only way for you to know is to be screened for it. And there's a picture taken of your eye. You go up to a machine, there will be a picture taken of it. And from the eye image, a specialist can tell whether you're going to develop blindness. And so, and what you can do is you can treat it if you know that. And the treatment is quite affordable, actually. And so this is where I think in India and in Thailand, we have been able to actually start deploying this, and even parts of Europe. And so this was something that I think we have covered about 600,000 lives in terms of being able to detect this. So that's the pain point that I think really affects the patient. So I mentioned earlier that you can have these models that are actually taking all these images, something like 700,000 to 1 million images, and they are actually have labels on them. A label is saying, do you have diabetic retinopathy? What severity level?
Okay.
And so how AI works is that you can actually have it learn on all of the images and these labels to then predict. And you hold out a set to say, is this actually working or not? And we know whether it's what the right answer is. So we test the system to see if it's actually working correctly or not. So that's part of us developing the technology, is that we use this data set, we apply these deep learning technologies on top of it, and it can learn directly from the data set.
Okay. So what were the main challenges in developing this AI technology or implementing this AI technology? Because I heard that you have been in this project for decades.
Yeah, we've been in this project for a decade. The first, I would say, 3 years of us working on this was convincing ourselves and thought leaders that the AI itself could be accurate at the level that we trust it. Because the challenge with also deep learning and AI is it's seen as a black box,
Right.
which means you don't know how it's working. You know, with these generative AI capabilities, they say it's emergent capabilities. How is this working?
Yes.
At the time, we developed techniques to actually explain. We developed techniques to interpret why is it telling us that. We could then select, let's say, in an image, the pixels that we thought were the ones that were telling us why is this, let's say, an image of a tumor, why do we think it's a tumor? Or in this case, if it's diabetic retinopathy, what is showing up that is making it think that it is diabetic retinopathy?
I can imagine how difficult it was, try to convince doctors that your technology is, convincing
and trustable and transparent. And so it took a lot of back and forth with what I would say experts, the top ophthalmologists in the world, to come around and see if they could trust it. And we published papers. One of the seminal papers we published was JAMA. And it was this paper that was groundbreaking because it's the first time the medical journals, the top tier medical journals, accepted that AI was actually performant and on par with clinicians. And we got there by actually learning from many, many clinicians. The clinicians would come, they essentially grade the model. We would do what we call adjudication, which is comparing the different doctors' answers and seeing if they line up. If they agreed, then we would build knowledge and see that this was actually better. If they disagreed, we'd have them talk to each other and we'd resolve, and they would come to some level of agreement. And so we were actually creating knowledge with by having all these experts and these clinicians speak to each other we had a tool to do this, to be able to generate the right labels.
So that was the first 3 years.
That was like the first three years. And then, yes, good point. Then it was actually this is about when we had met with, we started working with people who wanted to implement it and trial it and start working with larger and larger population sets with it. So then we spent the next 5 years or so really proving out that this works across different parts of the world. We did it for many different medical imaging capabilities, but in this case, we were working in Thailand, and we ran both studies that looked at prior data sets to see if they applied, and also ran future-looking studies, which meant that we worked with populations who consented in and agreed that they would actually see if this was working for them. And so this obviously takes time because you have to enroll patients and you have to see if this is actually working in practice. We would even run studies where we call it Wizard of Oz, where you have a person and not the AI actually give the experience. And we would learn things like if you were to give results immediately because of the AI, then you would actually get stronger treatment adherence. And it went from 35% to 72% if you gave immediate results back, things like that. So we're running those kinds of studies for the next 5 years. And actually, Thailand was one that we really felt could become a blueprint.
Why Thailand?
Well, I mentioned before, you have a universal healthcare. You have this national screening program that is actually directed at diabetic retinopathy. You also have, what I would say, the right convergence of partners who are interested. You have people like Dr. Paisan, who is progressive thinker, very forward-thinking, and looking to actually use AI and take that challenge. You have startups in the space that are local who are smart about the technologies, and they're also starting to engage and be able to start taking this commercially across to the last mile.
So from the global perspective, from one of the most innovative company, do we have enough technology to work with? I mean, sometimes we feel that we are lack of technology, limited resources, something like that. But I think this could be the good momentum for us to, leapfrog.
Yes.
And get into frontier industry.
Absolutely. I think that the one thing that is really beneficial about being in a country where you haven't had what we call entrenched or existing legacy systems is that you can leapfrog. That's what happened with mobile payments in Kenya and in Africa because they didn't have existing payment approaches. In this case, you don't have this existing set of payment structures and technologies that are preventing you from taking the major step forward to the next era of healthcare technology.
Right. So we should turn this, I would say, challenges into
an
opportunities.
Advantage. Absolutely, it can become an advantage. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's next? What next for this project?
Oh, so for this project, I came here to meet with one of the startups who is a local medical AI startup called Perceptra. They are licensing the model, and they're actually agreeing to do 1 million screenings free for underserved communities.
Wow.
That's the in-kind. We provide as Google the model to them, and then they will both figure out a business model around it and also provide these screenings.
And what is your goal? I mean, what are you expecting more and more? Because this is just a starting point.
Yeah, this is one of our near-term goals in the future. The hope is that actually this becomes an example of how you can actually take the AI and truly deploy it at scale nationally in a way that is financially sustainable. And this is one of the biggest challenges for some of the technology adoption is how do you make it so that there's a real economic market around using the technology.
So these challenges, you are anticipating these challenges that it might be difficult to implement this technology.
I think they know.
Widely, right.
I think they know how to implement it. I think actually the challenge is making sure that you can keep improving, keep making it better, make sure it gets to everybody. So the next stage of the challenge is to go from a population set of tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions. And for Google, we work in billions sizes. For us to actually see the technology help billions of people is something that we hope will happen.
Right. I hope that will happen.
Yes.
And if this happens soon, how would you leverage this technology to maybe other diseases? I'm not sure that we can do that.
Yes, you can actually. So we have this concept of foundational models. We also have the large language model. Gemini and ChatGPT. These are all foundational models. what it can do is as you give it different types of data to train on and different understanding of capabilities through combining models and potentially also just, I won't get into technical aspects of this, but you can actually start expanding the same model to support many modalities of data. So we have research where we have done that to look at everything from combining genomics data to imaging to text-based, even audio-based. So that is one direction, which is, and the reason why we are interested in all these different data sets coming together is you can discover things. You can do scientific discovery at this intersection of all these different modalities. Knowledge is usually narrowed into a specific discipline. And so if you have different people from different disciplines being able to communicate in the same language, you discover many things. And that's what these technologies are capable of if you enable them for multimodality.
I think it's really fascinating that AI can, help, our life and our world. And what's next? I mean, what is your goal? What is your, Google and you, what area are you, looking at more and more to make the impact more?
I think there's a few different areas we have been really focused on. We still believe there's tremendous areas that can help in health, and we look towards being able to make it so that anybody who needs healthcare has it at their fingertips. I was part of strategy to help people get information at their fingertips. Back in the day, your mobile phone didn't have any information on it. The reason why there's information on it is because we had this vision to try and get as much information to people on their mobile devices. So there's that for healthcare. For climate and helping what I would call both prevention, climate risk prevention, like floods, like wildfires, earthquakes. We have a number of different areas that we work in. We do risk predictions. We also do mitigation. So, carbon dioxide emissions. We have ways to help with that. We recently did a partnership to remove what are called contrails from airlines. So it's the thing that exists in the clouds because of planes, and that causes a huge percentage of actual carbon warming. And then you also have projects around adaptation. So how do people adapt to the changes in climate? That's certainly an area. Another one that I'm excited about for Thailand is a project to help with potentially reducing traffic in the area.
Please.
And so, some of these technologies we've launched to the rest different cities in the world, and so we hope to bring some of that to Thailand in terms of helping with day-to-day things like that in everyday life for people.
I'm looking forward to that project.
I hope that comes, yes, soon.
It's insane in Bangkok.
Yes, I've noticed.
Yeah. So another question that I would like to ask you is about it's not only about the future of AI, but from your perspective, can you paint a picture what the future looks like? These days, people are talking a lot about AI advancement, and there are a lot of, implications, applications, new milestones every single day.
Yep.
So sometimes it's too much for, audience, overwhelming, I think, kind of that. But from your perspective, I want to know, how do you see the impact of AI, and it will constantly change our life?
Technology will always change our lives. This happens to be the current technology that has taken over. If we rewind back to when the last really momentous one would probably be the internet. It changed all of our lives because it happened. With generative AI, the strengths of it are around being able to take information and transform it into something people that they weren't having access to can now see. that's why it's good for summarization and synthesis, but it's also very good, for example, for education. It's very good for areas. Why we think it's good for healthcare is because, like you said earlier, there's jargon. There's all this jargon coming out of me in terms of what am I saying, what technical words am I using, and same with clinical words. But what you're going to find is you can actually translate and understand across domains, disciplines, fields. You're going to be able to intersect across all these different areas of study that previously had not been able to communicate with each other before. That is another area of complete, I think, it's very exciting to think about how that will uncover. The concerns that people have, I think, is that it seems so much like it's behaving like a person because it can communicate. And for us, communication is such a powerful thing. When a baby begins to communicate, you suddenly can relate to it much more. And I think that this is what's happened with, our technologies have always had a lot of capacity. They could solve many problems, but it never was really communicating that in English before. And now it's communicating what it has all the ability to do in English. It also has the ability to take in many different contexts and produce it in one solution. Whereas before we would take it from many different computers and then we would put it together ourselves. And I think right now that feels very powerful to people because what we have been able to do is bring many different kinds of information together and provide it through one interface.
I'm not sure if I should ask this or not, but DeepSeek.
Yes.
DeepSeek. So I would call low-cost AI or Chinese AI that, tremendously impact any industry. And people are talking a lot about this topic in any aspect, geopolitics, technology, business implications. So I want to know your thoughts on this. So will we, face AI race or something like that?
An AI race and competition.
Yeah.
We already are in one. We certainly have a great competitive field. For the last few years, the competition has been very fierce in the generative AI space. And what you're seeing is with DeepSeek, a really nice set of techniques coming together to be very efficient with training a model. So I think competition's good. I think as consumers, you must demand transparency in how that's done. So I really like parts of the strategy in terms of doing an open source approach too.
I would say you are so optimistic. I mean,
is it too optimistic?
Yeah. No, not too optimistic, but you are optimistic about this situation. But some people are concerned about this competition.
I think it's warranted in many cases where if you were striving for the space is changing so quickly, if you're only looking maybe 1 year ahead, it would be very concerning because the space is changing so quickly. But I think if you're looking at 5-10 years of how this space will shape, this is a natural progression. And actually, to be honest, if you look, when we started AI in healthcare, that was also the time I was in the brain team. They had developed the transformer paper, which was the basis of it. And that paper came out in 2017. And we inside of Google were implementing it at the time, but not in the same way that it's being implemented in the last 4 or 5 years. But, at the time, it wasn't something that only people who really understood it could bet on such potential. Now it's become a thing. And this is not the first time this has happened. This has happened so many times in technology that I think if you have studied the history of technology, you'll see that there's an ebb and flow to all of these technological platforms. And what motivates me is that every time that happens, we have a chance to transform society to be better. We can actually improve. We can address systemic biases. We can address things that were broken before by using the technology to shape the future for everything to be better. But people have to be very vigilant to make that happen.
what advice would you give to Thai entrepreneurs or Thai innovators who want to be a part of this wave?
I've learned about these wonderful programs. One of them is AI Essentials to help essentially do capacity skill building. Essentially, that one is actually trying to target having people be able to be well-versed in development for the future using generative AI in their day-to-day. And the reason why we care so much about this is at the end of the day, it's important to find the problem you want to have solved. And the people who identify that are the people who are local and regional, and they, here, you have traffic problems. You want to solve that traffic problem. It's a pain point for you. And then those people who are experiencing those pain points will be the best people to solve the problem. And so really these programs are created to help empower the talent that is here to be able to actually go and tackle those specific problems.
Last question. What are the most, I would say, important skills or leadership qualities that everyone should, embrace from your experience? You're running these projects.
There's two things that I lean on very heavily as a leader. One is being able to be very clear about the purpose of why we're together. We share a mission. It's ultimately what's drawing us together. It also tends to be why you share values. So as a leader, leaning on the team culture, the values, the actual shared mission is so important because even if you're not there, what's keeping everybody together is that shared goal that you have. So that's one thing that I do. The other thing is that I do believe in role modeling, and as a leader, treating others in the same way that you would want to be treated and you would want your team to treat each other. I think that's very important in terms of how that comes down through all of your directs and through your team members and even like to other parts of the organization that you might be working with. And so these are some of the areas where I think, especially even if your task is not the most public or prominent task, encouraging that they do the best in that role and rewarding that and recognizing it and seeing it and valuing it is so important. So I think that's part of how I lead.
Very nice. So one more question.
Sure.
What excites you most about the future?
Excites me?
Yeah, excites you or keeps you awake at night?
Keeps me awake from a technological perspective or from everything in life?
Technology. I don't want to talk, another.
That's right. Okay, I just wanted to see where the question was going.
But if you will, please.
What excites me or keeps me, honestly, what keeps me up and motivated is technology is an amplifier. So it scales up everything that is applied to. This means that if you apply it to something, I sometimes say is that if it's broken or if it's perversely, then it will amplify that brokenness. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about how to apply technology because we're such early stages of it, trying to focus that technology to amplify the right problem, not amplify problems, but solve the right problems, and to actually be able to make sure that each time we deploy those technologies, that we're actually raising the bar of what society is capable of doing. And there's just all these opportunities to do that if people want to. It's a harder problem, but it's one that I hope people want to take up and challenge themselves with, which is really making things as positive as possible in many dimensions. And so that's really what motivates me.
Oh, thank you so much, Katherine. It's been a wonderful conversation.
It's been wonderful meeting you.
Thank you so much. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you.
Thank you.